Dear police officers of Reddit, have you ever responded to a call for paranormal reasons? My mom was a police officer. She tells the story of an old woman who called the police almost weekly complaining that there was a ghost in her house. They'd go in, check it out, and tell her they couldn't find anything. One day, one of the guys on her squad gets dispatched to this lady's house. He busts in, worriedly, and asks if she has a 2-liter bottle. She nods back solemnly with wide eyes and empties out a Coke bottle she had. "Ma'am, I'm gonna have to ask you to wait outside. It could get messy." She runs outside to the front porch. The cop walks upstairs, lights up a cigarette, and blows the smoke into the 2-liter bottle. He chills for a minute or two, then comes running out of the house, triumphantly holding the smoke-filled bottle, screaming, "I've got the ghost! I've got the ghost!" He threw it into the back of his Crown Vic and sped off. They never got a call from the lady again. I was a 911 dispatcher for about 5 years out of school. One night, I got a call from a lady at a residence in town. "911, what is your emergency? Is this the police?" She breathed. She was freaking out. Heavy breathing, scared, shaking voice. I've taken many calls like this, and from the sound of her voice, this was not going to be a routine call. I sat up straight, and my heart started to pump faster. "Yes, ma'am, what is your emergency?" "There's someone in my house." She trailed off, very breathy and genuine, but not loud and freaking out. "Okay, are you located at, house address?" "Yes." I dispatch the cars to start heading over to the address, and I don't give a reason yet. "Okay, do you know who this person is?" "Well, no, I don't. I think it's. I know this sounds so crazy, I think that there's a ghost in my house." She begins to sob and sounds so fucking scared. "There's noises, and I know there is a ghost right in the other room, I can hear it right now." At this time, the sergeant asks me the reason of the call and why I sent him and 2 other cars without explanation. Normally, you'd send 1 car to something like that. "It's suspicious activity," I told him. "What activity?" he demanded over the radio, a fair question. "Sir, the caller is claiming there is someone in the house, and she believes it to be a ghost." Silence on the air for about a minute. 10 to 4 is all he said. By the time they got there, the ghost was gone, and the poor lady was a freaked out mess, and she kept apologizing for calling us, but it was real, she kept repeating. The officers later told me that her sincerity actually freaked them out a lot, and when they searched the house, guns drawn, even they were scared. A guy calls, around 1:30 am, claims several people are running around his yard blowing slide whistles. Can't see anything, just keeps hearing it. Sounds odd, but maybe kids are being kids. On my way, when the dispatcher says the guy called back, says it may be radio interference causing the hidden transmitters in the house to make noise. What? So, I get there, and this guy is clearly just a little crazy. Tells me about how ADT put recorders in his house, and his neighbors are running around making this noise, and he's losing sleep and so on and so on. I'm mentally dismissing this whole thing and beginning to try placating him when I hear it. Whoop! From outside, to my right. A sound I'd never heard before. Definitely not a bird. I visibly react, and he goes, "You heard it?" I say, "Yeah, I sure did." He's extremely relieved, thanking God he's not crazy. I ask a few questions and hear it again. Whoop! This time, more to the left. I ask if he's had problems with his neighbors, and he launches into a tirade about how people have always been out to get him because, despite the authenticity of this noise, the fella is still a bit unhinged. As I'm talking to him. Whoop whoop whoop. The whole time. From the left, then behind, right again, left. Every 20 to 60 seconds. So, I tell him I'll check outside. He's worried for my safety, but I assure him I'll be okay. I set off into the darkness, in rural Missouri, to investigate a fleeting noise I'd never heard before. I'm going slow, shining my light around. Whoop. Off to my right. I'm telling myself I'm being silly. Ghosts, aliens, monsters, none of that is real. Whoop. Straight ahead, in the darkness. I'm in the backyard now, looking towards the wood line when. Whoop. Sounding like it was about 4 feet behind me. I scan around, hand on the butt of my pistol, feeling equal measures freaked out and stupid. I catch movement on the roof, scan upward, pistol half drawn. I hear it one more time. Whoop. Just as my gaze settles on one of these. Spinning lazily, every time the wind breezed. Fuck, I'm stupid. Not me, but my dad was a cop for 32 years. This was one of his craziest calls. A call goes out for reported screaming. It's mid-January. Important later. My father and another office respond to find a known deranged individual, very long rap sheet and has been in and out of psychiatric care for years, sitting on the front porch holding a double-sided wood-splitting axe. Steam is coming up off the grass, and there are chunks lying all over the lawn. Upon interviewing the suspect, he admits that he and a friend were playing poker. The suspect was losing nearly every hand and came to the conclusion that his friend was a haint, Southern for ghost, and was cheating him. The suspect grabbed the axe and chased his friend outside, and hacked him into dozens of pieces, thus causing the warm blood to create steam on the grass. My dad tells the suspect that he needs to get in the police car because it's haint-proof. He said the suspect dropped the axe and sprinted to get in the back seat while thanking them for helping him. When I was in high school, the days before cell phones were common, my friends were to come over to pick me up from my house one night. We had made plans at school for them to pick me up at 7 p.m. At 6, my parents said I had to come with them to do something, and I totally forgot to call my friends and tell them. They came to my house at 7 p.m. and called the house phone. No one answered. There were 4 of them in the car. They all told us the exact same story. They said that they were about to pull out of my driveway, but they saw someone peek through the blinds from the bedroom on the top floor right. That was my room, so they assumed that I was fucking around. 5 more times, they said that someone would peek through the blinds, and a couple of them said they even saw the person's eyes. We got home at probably 7:10 to 7:15, and they were still in our driveway. One of my friends came over and said they thought I was messing with them. Then they asked me, "So, who's staying in your room?" I told them that no one. So, they asked, "Who's home at your house right now?" Again, I told them, "No one." Their stone-cold faces then told me what they had seen repeatedly over the last 15 minutes. At first, we all thought there was a burglar in the house or something, so we called the cops. They came over and inspected the house. There were 0 signs of a break-in, nothing was touched, and nothing was stolen. Our house had an alarm on it, so there is no way someone could have come into the house without setting off the alarm. My family, my friends, and the cop all kind of stood around for a few minutes, trying to make sense of the situation. My friends swore up and down, and still do, that they couldn't have imagined what they saw. All 4 of them saw the same things, and it wasn't particularly a dark night, so their eyes wouldn't be playing tricks on them. To this day, none of us can make sense of the situation. A lot of weird things happened in this house. It was a fairly old house, I think 70 or so odd years old. The other things that happened can all be explained due to just seeing or hearing things, but this one story is the true unexplainable one. My sister fell asleep on her couch on a few occasions, but said she would wake up in bed. She never had any actual reported cases of sleepwalking, but it's possible that she was. My mom and my sister both said they saw a lady in white. My sister said she saw her on a few occasions. We had a winding staircase to go upstairs, and my sister said that a few times late at night, when she made the turn to go upstairs, she saw a figure standing at the top looking down at her. My mom said she saw the same figure a few times out of the corner of her eye while watching TV late at night. On a few different occasions, our house phone rang at 3 a.m. in the morning. We had caller ID, and the number on display would always read 66. It's the only time I can remember where the caller ID displayed a number that wasn't 7 digits long. I never really ever felt alone in the house, even when I was completely alone. It was always just this feeling that someone was always in the next room over. Just to be clear, this is not my story, it comes from a guy I knew from a forum, who is both a rural Texas peace officer and also a fairly entertaining writer. One of the nice things about working in small towns is the unique problems that you learn to solve. One such problem belonged to a sweet little old lady who lived in a big, old mansion over in the old section of town. She had a ghost infestation. Now, most of the time, this was all right, I think she liked the company, but once in a while, the ghosts would get a wee bit rowdy. Thereupon, she'd call the SO, and one of us would be dispatched to take care of the situation. We'd show up, she'd let us into the huge old house, the officer would go upstairs and read a stern warning to the ghosts. I found that if you took George C. Scott's speech from Patton, complete with pacing back and forth and gestures, and cleaned up the language a bit, the ghosts would normally be impressed enough to keep quiet for a week or 2. Once you were done, you'd go back downstairs, where the lady would stuff you full of homemade cinnamon rolls and iced tea, and you'd swap gossip for a while. One day the sheriff gets a bright idea, we'd take care of this situation once and for all. Plans are made. People are notified. We wait for the call. And one Friday evening, she calls. Not only are the ghosts rowdy, but it also sounds like they're having a party. And, delivered in whispered tones, she thinks she heard some girl ghosts giggling up there, and this wasn't right. The call goes out. We load up our full-time officers, all 4 of them, we get our reserves, mostly security from a local federal facility, we don our ninja gear, we mount our trusty steed, reworked, Korea-era ambulance, and we sway and sputter and backfire and shudder and creak our way over the hill and through the dale. Once on location, a hasty whispered conference takes place. Who looks the least threatening? That would be yours truly, having hysterics in the back. Up I go, I knock on the door, tell the little old lady that we're here to solve her problem, and seat her on the porch swing with a blanket. Crash. 20 SWAT rhinos in full gear, hit the door, clear the bottom floor tactically, flow the stairs, and then the shouting starts. Hey, you. Yes, you. Out, out, out. One here. Out, out, out. Clear. You. Yes, you. Where do you think you're going? Out, out, out. Thus were our thoroughly scared and cowed, albeit invisible, subjects herded to the front lawn, where the sheriff is standing on the roof of the ambulance, SWAT vehicle, delivering his patented fire and brimstone, straight path, and crooked path speech. Complete with finger pointing, arms waving, and emotional entreaties to what only an absolute cynic would consider an empty lawn. Watched with great interest by all the neighbors, heck, most of the town, who promptly got out the lawn chairs, the sodas, and the snacks and basically started a block party. Sigh. Small towns. Once we were done and had allowed the thoroughly chastised and completely humbled spirits back upstairs, we sat in her kitchen, in black BDUs, rifles, shotguns, etc., eating cinnamon rolls and drinking iced tea. During this last part, the lady whispered to me that we had missed one. Never said I wasn't fast on my mental feet, I promptly whispered back that he was too young to be subjected to such a scary action. She examined him closely and declared that I was probably right. It took the ghosts almost 3 months to go back to their rowdy ways. Hey. Law dog. I am not a cop, but 3 years ago, our very elderly next-door neighbor died suddenly in her house. They found her body 5 days later in the kitchen. Fast forward to last summer. I'm sitting in my house watching a movie, and all of a sudden, about 8 police cars come out of nowhere, sirens blaring, lights on, and most park in that empty house. Some park in my driveway, so I went outside to see what was up. A police officer went through the quick formalities and asked if I had seen anything strange in the past 5 minutes. I replied no and rather hesitantly asked what was going on. He said that the police department received a call from the house, and when the operator picked up, the line went dead. I stayed at a friend's place that night. My uncle works for dispatch in my town, and he recently told my family of the weirdest call he's ever gotten. He says that he had received a call from a landline one night, and when he answered it, there was only static on the other end. This happened 2 more times. Finally, he calls a squad to go check out the address from the caller ID. When the cops got there and walked into the house, they immediately saw that there was a dead body. The person had been dead for 5 months. The craziest part about it was that there was no electricity or any other utility working. So, there is no way they should have been able to get those calls into dispatch. But if they hadn't, who knows how long that person's body would have stayed there. Not a cop, but during a ride-along, we were dispatched to this house for a domestic disturbance. We entered the house and found an elderly couple sitting on the couch. The woman immediately began to tell us that her husband has been walking through walls and bringing girls back to their house and fornicating, her words, on the kitchen floor. Clearly, the woman was nuts, and her husband just sat there staring at us. I swear if he had cracked a smile, I would have lost it completely. The woman ended up being committed, and the man probably quit walking through the walls with his girls and instead uses the door now. Not a police officer story, but a paranormal story. I've posted it before in previous threads, but I'll post it here again as it might be what you are looking for in general. I had just turned 22, and my parents had sold their house and purchased a place out in the country. On the property, there was a big shed not far from the house that I decided to turn into my place now. I felt kind of uncomfortable in the shed sometimes, but my dog kept me company, so it wasn't so bad. Anyway, I had been in there maybe 2 weeks, and one night I'm on the computer, my dog asleep at my feet and I need to pee, so I get up and go outside to piss. It was a beautiful clear night, and the stars were incredible. Next thing I hear, the shed door slam behind me. I turn immediately and try to open it, but it won't budge. Now from inside the shed, I can hear my dog start to growl, quietly at first, then louder, now he's barking, and I'm panicking trying to get the door open. I must mention that I'm 6'5" and well built, play sports, etc., but even ramming my full weight into the door won't open it, and I'm really panicking now as my dog's barks turned into whines, then whimpering, then silence, and with all my might I slam into the door, and it flies open. The light is off inside now, and it's pitch black, it won't turn back on, and I'm in complete darkness. Can't see my dog anywhere, and I stumble around trying to find a torch. Finally, I found it and picked it up and turned on my flashlight, and I wasn't prepared for what I'd see next. My dog had literally squashed itself into the furthest, darkest corner of the room, eyes closed, and is shaking violently. I immediately moved towards him, and as soon as I got within reach of him, he leapt at me into my arms and wouldn't move. I picked him up, and I swear I've never run so fast in my goddamn life. I never stepped foot in that sheet ever again, and my dog wouldn't even go near that part of the property. I don't know what happened in that shed that night, but I'll never forget it. I avoid sheds now. I was called to a job at night where the informant said there were firearms being shot in the area, semi-rural. Nothing strange at first glance. Searched the general area and found nothing, so approached the informant. She was a middle-aged hippie. She proceeded to tell me that a UFO had landed a couple of properties over, and she saw aliens shooting laser guns at cattle. I smiled, doffed, and left. Not my call, but my dad served for 25 years. It wasn't really a ghost story, but I think it's worth telling. One night he gets a call from a woman who says her neighbor has made a pact with the devil. The woman calling is about 35 and a religious wacko. The neighbor called about is about 75 at the time. My dad went over and knocked on the door, and the old lady answered, all happy, nice place decorated the same way for the past 50 years. She invites my dad in without even asking why he came, makes him some coffee, and asks how his day was. Naturally, at this point, my dad is wondering what the heck the call was about, but it came clear soon. At some point, my dad realizes he isn't the only person she is talking to, and that she thinks her apartment is full of people. My dad thanks her for the coffee, and she tells him to come back anytime. The whole time she was talking, he was writing down the names of the people she was talking to, and does some research on her when he got back. Turns out she was talking to family members, who were all dead. She had a daughter, 3 sons, a brother, and a husband. All dead, and she had no family, and no friends. She hadn't spoken to another person in years, her groceries were delivered, and she rarely left her apartment. Over the next 19 years, my dad took care of her, my sister and I came over all the time and just sat and talked with her. She even taught me how to cook. Over the years, she stabilized and stopped talking to her dead relatives. She just needed people to live with. She actually lived till she was 94 and died in the guest room of my parents' house since it had become harder to take care of her from a distance as she got closer to the end. She was like a grandma for us. Called a residence out in the boonies. This was in Wyoming, so the boonies are really the boonies, at about 11 p.m. about suspicious activity. When we get there, we are told by the family living there that there are very strange screams coming from a creek area about 1,000 feet out. And sure enough, waiting outside on the porch with them for about a minute, I hear it. It is very hard to describe what it sounded like. It was like a woman in very severe distress, but higher pitched, and each scream lasted for about 10 to 15 seconds. It never sounded like it was saying anything. It just sounded like a cry of sheer terror. And it repeated again. We tell the family we are going to investigate, so we just walk down to the creek since it was nice out. We hear about 2 more screams, getting louder as we approach the creek. By now, we're both kind of freaked out. There are 2 possibilities: someone is getting murdered or maimed in the creek bed, or it's a wild animal. As we approach the creek bed, we hear no screams for about 5 minutes. We search around and find nothing, yelling at the top of our lungs for somebody to come towards us if they are there. Then, we hear the exact same scream behind us, exactly from where we came from. We get about halfway back to the house, and the scream comes so loudly it seems to be right next to us. We frantically shine our flashlights everywhere and find nothing, no eye glints of animals, no rustling of bushes, just silence. We trace our steps back, and the scream comes from around the creek again. This time, it lasted about 30 seconds and was much louder than before. Our retreat becomes a little more hastened. By this time, we were both scared shitless and verified with the family to call us again if they heard it. They never called again, and we got the hell out of there. I still don't know what it was. As an avid outdoorsman, I know no animal makes a cry like that, especially one that can move stealthily without being spotted by flashlights. Something else that weirded me out was that it was completely silent while the screams were happening. During summer in Wyoming, there is always some type of ambient animal sounds: frogs croaking, crickets chirping, owls hooting, coyotes howling, etc., but there was nothing. Until we were leaving, and the screams had stopped. Then a frog started croaking. It gives me the creeps just thinking about it still. Navy Security Forces member here. This will probably get buried, but oh well. I was on shift with a DoD police officer on the oldest Navy base we have in the States. We get a call about an alarm going off in a nearby office, and it being midnight, we quickly get over there. When we get to the building, there are lights on in the second story. We try all the doors, and they are locked, try the windows locked, look for any possible entryway, and everything is sealed up tight. We call the building commander, and they send a guy to come and turn off the alarm and let us look around to make sure all is well. When he got there, his first statement to us was, "Alarm going off again? Damn it, I'm sick of that ghost fucking my days off up." Apparently, everyone that works in that building has claimed there is a ghost that likes to move stuff around and cause the alarm to go, and a check of the call log for the alarm activation showed that every time it went off, the building was locked up tight. Police officer here. 3 years ago, living in CO, the station got a call about a ghost in someone's house. I wasn't the one on the phone, but apparently, the person was hysterical and hard to understand. I arrived on the scene. This woman of about 40 was standing in her front yard. The house is upper middle class, pretty bland. She swears there is a ghost inside. The only reason we didn't disregard the call is because she claimed there was screaming in her attic. She claimed the ghost was doing it. I was supposed to make sure an animal wasn't stuck up there or something. She explained she has been hearing this screaming and bumping on the walls the past 2 days. She is the only one who lives there, no pets who could cause it, neighbors are on vacation. So, of course, the logical explanation is a ghost. She was far too afraid to check the attic, so I headed up there. It was full of cobwebs and musty, and of course, the only light bulb didn't work. I take a step, and all of a sudden, I hear banging and muffled yelling. Navigating with my flashlight, I head over to the source, a corner in the far back. There was a hobo there. His leg had fallen through the floor and was stuck, and he couldn't get out. He started crying tears of joy when I walked over, thanking him, and asking for help simultaneously. I pull him out, trying to scratch his leg as little as possible, and lead him outside after letting him stop and get some water. He told me he was just looking for a place to spend the night, and I felt like he had gotten punished enough for his trespass. I asked if he needed anything else before I sent him on his way. Right when he opened his mouth to speak, I realized that he was a 50-foot tall, gray leviathan from the Paleolithic era. He said, "Well, could I have about tree fitty?" I responded, "I ain't giving you no tree fitty, Loch Ness monster. Get out of here." Looking defeated, he began to make his way to the nearest lake.